On a campus with a relaxed atmosphere, Li Shizhen sat in his seat with one hand on his face and looked out the window lightly. "Don't talk nonsense with you guys, I came over here." "But, nothing." Li Shizhen couldn't help but feel depressed for a while. He traveled to this world for more than a year, and he didn't open any golden fingers at all. In the novels I have read, there are indeed some time travel characters who complain that they have nothing, but before they complained, the plugin started. It's been a flat year for me. This world is about the same level of technology as the world where Li Shizhen passed through, so there is no way to come back with future knowledge and beat the ancients. What's even more terrible is that the students who are in the third year of high school have been through hard work for a whole year, and the college entrance examination was only completed 2 days ago. Hey! On Li Shizhen's hand, a translucent device appeared faintly. It was a handheld game console with a very modern style. If you insist on golden fingers, this thing might barely count as an opportunity. The problem is, this thing has no electricity. Unable to start. Li Shizhen had experimented, and no one but himself could see the handheld game console. What's more is that this thing has no place to install the battery, no charging interface, and other items in the world can't touch this game console, so there is no way to use a screwdriver to pry it open to find a way to connect the power supply. Even if he slammed the handheld game console to the ground, it would turn into little pieces of starlight and return to Li Shizhen's palm, which would emerge with every thought. There is only one clue. There is a game cassette that cannot be pulled out from the back of the game console, with Pokémon written on it. Li Shizhen has played several versions, and the orthodox translation should be Pokémon, but the shape of this cassette and the model of this game console are completely unimpressive, and no version has been written. Possibly it was a magic-modified copycat machine with some folk cassettes. The biggest problem is still not being able to play. The handheld game console can't be turned on, let alone inserting a Pokémon cassette. Even inserting a kelp is useless. Li Shizhen, why are you in a daze? Going to the auditorium for the graduation ceremony. There was Sha Tianxishan's voice next to her, and there was a refreshing breath in the air. These all came from Wen Dongli, the classmate of the class. Hey! It's time, let's go together. Ha, don't, I'll sit with them. Seeing Ban Hua and his good sisters leaving, Li Shizhen gently stood up from his seat. Wen Dongli was the first person Li Shizhen got close to when he was in this strange world. When I first passed through, I was a little at a loss. When I opened the window in an unfamiliar room, a pretty girl in a high-end community diagonally opposite also opened the window. At that moment, the memory of the original owner flooded into Li Shizhen's mind. The one who lived in the diagonally opposite community was Ban Hua, Wen Dongli. Li Shizhen, who had just passed through, received the bits and pieces of information in his head, and went out a little dizzy to relax, and then met Wen Dongli, who was also quite worried. In the next year of high school, Li Shizhen and Wen Dongli almost all went to and from get out of class together, from being silent all the time, to being able to chat a few words lightly, and when approaching the school, they would deliberately stagger the time to enter one after another. In the process of recalling, he moved a little slower, and only Li Shizhen was left in the entire class. There were hurried footsteps approaching in the corridor, and a girl with glasses as thick as the bottom of a beer bottle, with a rather messy ponytail, headed into the class. There are still people who haven't left. Li Shizhen. Hurry up, the graduation ceremony is about to begin. Oh, class representative, I'll go right now. The representative of this class, Celadone, it was summer, and she also raised the collar of her school uniform to cover her fair neck. The class representative has 2 birthmarks that look like ice cracks on his neck. Although he is deliberately covered by a collar all year round, everyone knows it. Li Shizhen traveled through the world he lived in before, and each subject had its own class representative, such as a Chinese class representative and a math class representative, but there was only one general class representative in this world, whose position was equivalent to the study committee. Celadone urged and then turned to leave, obviously there was other work to do. Li Shizhen still walked out of the class door in a hurry, lying on the guardrail watching the student tide walking below, and had no intention of going downstairs to the auditorium at all. Because, this graduation ceremony will definitely not be carried out, and disaster will happen later. Boom! Li Shizhen watched the scenery for a while. There was a violent shock on the street outside the No. 2 middle school in Furong City. At this moment, the barriers of time and space were torn apart, tearing the surrounding things into pieces, and monsters kept pouring out of the cracks in time and space. A voice below exclaimed, "It's a space-time crack. Everyone, run away. Don't mess up." A teacher immediately stood up and gave instructions, "Hide within the protective barrier of a nearby building first. Then enter the underground shelter." A burst of black magic energy spread in all directions. The overall barrier of Furong City No. 2 middle school was torn apart due to the gap in time and space, and monsters rushed into the campus. Li Shizhen stretched and was very calm, because this has happened 9 times. It's not that space-time rifts and monsters often appear. Reading www.yuyugonshu.com, but go back in time. Go back in time 9 times. Li Shizhen completed the college entrance examination and attended the graduation ceremony 2 days later. At this time, there will be a time-space rift and monsters, and then the time will be reversed, back to 10 days ago. Just because of the repeated rewinding of time, Li Shizhen has already taken the college entrance examination 9 times, and he has seen 9 monsters invade Furong City No. 2 middle school, so he is so calm, and his calmness is a bit boring. No matter how many students died in this disaster, if you close your eyes later, and it's a few days before the college entrance examination, it's like nothing happened. Li Shizhen couldn't help feeling that his scalp was numb. He had already cycled 9 times in the past 10 days. If the cycle continued, he would not go crazy. Li Shizhen, why are you still here? Hurry up and enter the underground shelter. There is a gap in time and space outside, and monsters are coming. Celadon ran back for some unknown reason, panting and beckoning to Li Shizhen from a distance. Although the general plot of each time back is exactly the same, there will always be some changes in details. For example, this is the first time Li Shizhen sees the class representative running back. Class representative, it's okay, everything will pass. I know that everything will pass. The people from the demon suppression team are about to arrive at our school, but they have to hide in the underground shelter. Don't hide. Li Shizhen noticed the familiar distortion, and counted the time. It was almost done. After blinking, I felt my body lying flat on a soft surface, the air conditioner hummed slightly in the room, and the atmosphere instantly became peaceful from the previous crisis and turmoil. It's back again. He took out the calendar and glanced at it. Just like the previous times, the time went back 10 days, and the countdown to the college entrance examination was the last week. There were review materials piled up on the table, and Li Shizhen had completely lost interest in them. He had gone through the same college entrance examination 9 times in a short period of time. He had gone through all of the A and B papers, and he was tired of reading them. Thinking about the time when Li Shizhen adjusted his state, he immediately started to review. He was ecstatic after going back in time for the first time. He felt that he had done the exam questions, and that he could do well in the second college entrance examination. In fact, no matter how good you are in the test, it's useless. It's not like you have to go back in time and clear everything that happened in those 10 days. When he had just gone back in time, Li Shizhen even thought about writing down all the lottery numbers and stocks with sharp daily limit. After reflowing a few times, I calmed down. I remembered that I had a hammer. The alarm clock beside him rang. It was 6:30 in the morning. Li Shizhen got up from the bed and opened the curtains. Shoo! Diagonally opposite the high-end community, there is also a family that opened the curtain, which is Ban Hua's house. Li Shizhen and Wen Dongli formed a tacit understanding by chance. They opened the curtains at 6:30 every morning, nodded to each other, and exchanged glances. This scene reminded Li Shizhen of the first day he had just traveled to a strange world. When he opened the curtains, he happened to see Ban Hua pulling the curtains of the diagonally opposite window at the same time. After simply eating breakfast, Li Shizhen shouted symbolically, "I'm going out." The original owner of this body has lived almost alone since junior high school. His parents are researchers who are addicted to fossil research. They have traveled all over the world for many years, and they spend more time in the underground than on the ground, and they can't get in touch at all. Fortunately, Li Shizhen was able to live a normal life after leaving a considerable amount of savings for students. Li Shizhen, you seem to have something on your mind. Passing by the high-end neighborhood next door, Wen Dongli appeared very punctually, leaning slightly to say hello. Li Shizhen smiled. The time looped 9 times. I had something on my mind for 80 to 90 days. In the eyes of others, today is still a new day on the normal timeline. You're in the 3rd year of high school, who wouldn't mind? Of course, you have to figure out where to go in the summer vacation. I'm thinking too far. There's only 1 week left. I have to stabilize my state and try my best to get good grades. Li Shizhen wanted to laugh when he heard the college entrance examination, not joking. He took the same exam 9 times, which made me interested. During the first 3 or 4 time travel, Li Shizhen did not realize that the time travel would continue to cycle within 10 days, which is called an addicted study. Do all the questions you bought within 10 days. After you pass the college entrance examination, you will go back in time. You can buy the questions you haven't done before in the next 10 days, which is equivalent to spending a share of money and doing different question books repeatedly. Until 5 or 6 times back in time, Li Shizhen realized that the situation was not right. Even if he got full marks in the test, it was useless. He still had to go back to 10 days ago. Chatting casually with Ban Hua, they turned around the intersection ahead and walked more than 100 meters to the number 2 middle school in Furong City. The two tacitly distanced themselves so that other students would not find out that they came together. After finishing the whole day's course, Li Shizhen stretched out, and there was a scream like a cat's fur. Celadone appeared in front of the seat. Her voice was very slender, but in order to show the leadership and majesty of the class representative, she deliberately forced herself to increase the tone, so she looked like a cat with fried fur. Li Shizhen. What's up? Li Shizhen raised his eyes and looked at the class representative. He actually knew that there would be such a bridge on the first day of going back in time. Because they didn't want to study, they were all sleeping, and the representatives of the class at the next table across the aisle came to ask about the situation. You're very uninspired today. You're sleepy in the morning class. The classmate at the same table just nodded and didn't say much. She didn't want other students to see that she had an extra relationship with Li Shizhen and maintained a normal image of the same table. Li Shizhen shook his head and replied, "It's okay, I didn't sleep well yesterday." You have to cheer up, the college entrance examination is still a week away. When he got home, Li Shizhen threw his school bag on the ground. From now until before the college entrance examination, the books in the school bag would not change. Even if he brought the wrong book, it didn't matter. There was absolutely no need to review. Li Shizhen ate something casually and sat down to think calmly. The continuous reversal of time cannot be resolved without a solution. There is no clue as to how to release it. I always feel that it should be connected to advanced technologies such as quantum mechanics. Then there's the rift in time and space and monsters. It seems reasonable to rush into the space-time crack to be able to travel to other time spaces, but every time the space-time crack appears, the surrounding things will be shattered. Li Shizhen wasn't sure, if he died, would he be able to go back in time to 10 days ago? If he didn't, it would be a big loss, and he didn't need to gamble with his life. After thinking about it, Li Shizhen had no choice but to get up and leave the house. Every time I go back in time, I do something different. This is the only stupid way I can try now. I pray that some causal relationship will be triggered by chance and coincidence, which will cause the butterfly effect and release the time back. It sounds hopeless, but Li Shizhen has another idea. With a slight thought, the handheld game console appeared in his hand, and this thing has not been able to start normally. When I have no clue, I just wander around outside, reading www. Maybe yuyugonshu.com can find some clues, at least it sounds easier than solving the clock back. Counting this time, Li Shizhen went back in time 10 times, and Furong City was almost covered. He didn't want to go anywhere in the middle of the night, so he simply walked around the neighborhood. Speaking of clues about opening up with handheld game consoles, Li Shizhen thought of other things related to games, such as internet cafes. However, I have been to an internet cafe before, and the game of Pokemon does not exist in the current world, and there has been no change in bringing handheld game consoles to internet cafes. What else? Put it around other handhelds? It sounds a bit funny, but Li Shizhen intends to give it a try. There is an electronic products street about a kilometer near his home, where you can buy the latest version of handheld game consoles in the world, as well as old collectibles. After walking for more than 10 minutes, the outline of the electronic products street came into view. Li Shizhen came here a few times back in time, and even held a portrait of a handheld game console for the senior shop owner to see. The owner is convinced that the same game console does not exist in this world, unless it is privately modified. The more Li Shizhen thought about it, the more confident he felt. At this time, a series of mechanical electronic music came from across the street. Since it is a street of electronic goods, how can there be less game arcades? There were several video game halls next door on the messy path next door. The music of the arcade wafted out of the game hall, making Li Shizhen feel like a spring breeze. Yet, I've been to the electronic products street several times, but I didn't expect to go to the video game arcade to have a look. A handheld computer like Pokemon is actually a video game. Inspired, Li Shizhen crossed the sidewalk and walked towards the entrance of the largest video game hall. You let me go. The sound of a cat's frying fur complemented the surrounding video arcade, making it less serious. A few thugs surrounded a girl with dyed red hair and tried to drag her to play with her. The girl's refusal was getting louder and louder. After all, this is not an empty alley. There are thoughtful security forces in several large video game halls. Humph! I don't know how to lift up. Don't you just come out to play when you dress up like this? The gangster left cursingly. The girl shook her hair and took a few steps back to the street. She wears light eye makeup, a slant neck blouse with a single shoulder on the upper body, and a small waist is also revealed. Bracelet, full of tame dress. Li Shizhen stood 3 meters away. The more he looked, the more he felt that this little sister was familiar. She must have seen it somewhere. But the original owner's social circle doesn't seem to have a little sister-level character. Suddenly, Li Shizhen's eyes focused on the little sister's neck. There were 2 interlaced cyan lines on her fair skin, like ice cracks on ancient porcelain. Celadine. Little Tame's body trembled violently, she almost jumped from the spot, and ran to the depths of the road. Li Shizhen was astonished, he definitely didn't recognize the wrong person, so he chased while shouting. Class representative! It's me! Don't run away! The other party's running speed was not fast. Seeing that she could reach out and pat her on the shoulder, Celadone stopped suddenly. Li Shizhen was caught off guard and hugged Celadone, but fortunately, the car braked in time and didn't push the class representative to the ground on the spot. Class representative, I. Li Shizhen's mouth was pinched with sweaty little hands, and Celadone's voice was slender and delicate. Don't shout. Li Shizhen looked up and down at the class representative in front of him. How can I shout if you don't run away? Celadone's impression to other students has always been old-fashioned and hard-working, and she is the teacher's minion. As a class representative, her grades are quite good. She has never fallen out of the top 3 in Furong number 2 middle school. She usually wears glasses that look like the bottom of a beer bottle, has a very messy ponytail, and uses a stand-up collar to cover her neck. The last 2 birthmarks looked like ice cracks. If other students found out that the class representative had dyed his hair, dressed up so hot, and wandered around the entrance of the video game hall, I don't know how he would react. Class representative, you are. Don't call me a class representative. Okay, class representative, what are you doing here? Come to the video game hall, of course to play. Then what are you running for? What do you say? The answer is self-evident. Celadon dressed up like this and appeared at the entrance of the video game hall. If it was reported back to the number 2 middle school in Furong City, not to mention how the school would react, the impact on public opinion would definitely be quite bad, and 80% of the family would have to know about it. Such negative news before the college entrance examination will seriously damage the atmosphere of the examination. Don't worry, the class representative, I won't say it, Li Shizhen glanced at the palm of his hand. Before, he had been holding the handheld game console in his hand, holding it like a detector, hoping that it would respond somewhat in the video game street. Now there really is a reaction, the screen actually cracked. You must know that even if this thing hits the ground, it will only turn into a light spot and return to the inside of the palm. How could it be cracked? And because of the slight collision with Celadon before. Looking at the screen with 2 thin lines torn apart, Li Shizhen was surprised to find that the game actually started running. Different from the old-fashioned appearance, the game interface was actually rich in color and 3D. 3D, that must be the 4th generation of Pokémon and above. Etc. Li Shizhen found that something was wrong. There was no title animation for this thing. Even if it's a folk remake, it wouldn't be enough to delete the title animation, right? According to the traditional opening, Pokémon should have a doctor, throw a Pokeball on the ground, tell you what kind of world this is, and then choose the player's gender, and the character of the other gender will become a formidable enemy in the game. But this Pokémon skips even the process of choosing a gender and entering a player's name. Appears directly in the initial town. Li Shizhen? Have you been fooled? No, I hugged the get out of class representative just now, and I'm still thinking about it. You. Li Shizhen tried to press the shutdown button and turned it on again, only to find that it was not a shutdown button at all, but a screen lock button. After pressing it, the handheld game console went black, and pressing it again returned to the normal interface. And this game console has no power display, it seems that it will not run out of power in a short time. Li Shizhen waved his hand and put the handheld game console into his body, feeling so good that he would fly into the sky. Class representative, thank you. Celadon was taken aback, suddenly, what's wrong, and more. I warned you just now, don't call me a class representative here. Okay, class representative, won't you go in and play? Celadon bowed her head in shame, actually, I dare not go in. Hey! Li Shizhen didn't recover for a long time, don't dare to go in. What are you doing here dressed like a little sister? I want to go in, but I just don't dare to go in, so every time I come here, I'm like this, tangled at the door for a long time, and then go home. Celadon uses simple makeup tools, and her red hair is also dyed with a disposable hair dye. When she gets home, she finds a park and uses the tap to rinse it. It looks like she's going home from a night run for fitness. Li Shizhen's head was full of black lines. Class representative, you, come to the video game hall, but dare not go in. How many times has this happened? Actually, when I was in high school, I wanted to enter the video game arcade, but I never dared to enter every time I came here. What? Li Shizhen was shocked. He originally thought that he would struggle 2 or 3 times at most, but he didn't expect that Celadon would come to the entrance of the video game hall since his first year of high school, and he has been wandering until the college entrance examination is approaching, yet he dares to enter? You, Tiangziu. Don't make fun of me. This. Li Shizhen glanced at the video game hall in front of him. I'll accompany you in, so I won't be afraid if I accompany you in. Really? Real? Li Shizhen thought about quickly studying the handheld game console after it was turned on. It's definitely not convenient to stand on the side of the road now, so I'll just go into the video game hall. Celadon likes to play how he likes to play. Let's study our handheld game console. Let's go. Celadon carefully stretched out and pinched the corner of Li Shizhen's clothes, as nervous as a little girl who was about to be taken to a nightclub to sell. The electric door of the game room slowly opened, and Li Shizhen bought a box of game coins and gave it to Celadon. So you will always play, right? Yes. Yes. Celadon took the game coin box and held it in his hand as if he had received a rare treasure. Which one do you play first? I want to play that, racing. Celadon pointed to the virtual racing car with a steering wheel in the corner. Li Shizhen nodded. Sitting in the corner would not affect my research on handheld game consoles. Let's talk about it in the front row. The game is roughly set according to the Platinum version of the 4th generation of Pokémon. In general, the moves are also the power and effects of the 4th generation, and props and plots from other generations will also be used. Celadon put 2 game coins into the coin slot and began to try the racing game. At first, he was a little uncomfortable, but after getting familiar with the rules, he became more and more addicted. Li Shizhen moved a stool and sat down beside him, turned on the handheld game console. The style of the game interface is very similar to that of Pokémon, a bit like the NDS version, but the game mode is very different. The protagonists of Pokémon in all dynasties usually appeared in small towns, or moved to a small town. After going downstairs, they talked to their mother and went to the doctor to ask for the 3 elves. But the game console in Li Shizhen's hands, at the beginning, the protagonist is standing alone in a small town, with the PC on the left, the elf center with the red roof, and the blue roof shop with shop on the right. The architectural style is exactly the same as that of Pokémon. Li Shizhen pressed the function key to open the menu list. There were only 2 options, backpack and personal information. I haven't asked the doctor for the elf Pokédex. It's normal that there is no picture option in the menu bar, but there is no save option either. Think about it, this handheld game console will only lock the screen and will not shut down, so there is no need to save. Li Shizhen manipulated the game character to look around, and felt more and more wrong. The initial town of Pokémon should have no elf center and store, and it will only be available in the second town. The important buildings in the initial town are your own home, your rival's home, and the doctor's home. But the small town in the game interface is really not big. There are only 2 buildings, the elf center and the store. There are only nurses and shop assistants in the elf center. Besides, there are no other NPCs in the whole town. It's a bit too shabby, everything that should be there is missing, and there is something that shouldn't be there. Control the game character to explore on the edge of the town. There is a road up, down, left and right, all of which are blocked by roadblocks. This is a bit embarrassing. In the game, there has been a temporary impassable situation. The only possibility is that a certain plot or linear mission has not been completed, and the road will pass after completion. But there are only 2 NPCs in the whole town. One is the little nurse who is in charge of treating elves at the elf center, and the other is a store clerk who is responsible for selling things. If you don't have a mission, you won't be able to get out. If you don't step on the grass, no elves will jump out. Even if a elf jumped out, Li Shizhen didn't have his own elf or a elf ball, so he couldn't catch it. In the store, there is a Pokeball for 200 gold coins. The pocket money unit in the Pokémon series is Pokémon, let's just call it gold coins, a Super Ball for 600 gold coins, and a premium ball for 1,200 gold coins. However, Li Shizhen didn't have any pocket money, so he didn't even think about buying any poke balls. It's a dead end. Li Shizhen, Li Shizhen. The feet of the clothes were gently pulled twice, and Celadon felt comfortable playing the racing simulation game. Only then did he remember that he was only playing for himself, and Li Shizhen was left hanging by the side. Li Shizhen, do you want to play? No, what do the class representatives want to play next? Li Shizhen had no intention of playing video game consoles. If he couldn't think of a breakthrough in his handheld console, if it was activated, it would be a waste of time, and he couldn't do anything. Celadon stood up and looked around, grabbed the doll. Okay, let's go. With Li Shizhen not by his side, Celadon still didn't dare to act in the arcade hall, and continued to hold Li Shizhen's clothes. After playing several pickups in a row, the time reached 21:30, and Celadon reluctantly followed Li Shizhen away. After leaving the main entrance of the arcade hall, Celadon immediately distanced herself, cleared her throat, and acted like a class representative on weekdays. Li Shizhen, don't tell anyone about today's affairs. You only warn me now. Li Shizhen responded gloomily, then put away the handheld game console and tossed it for more than 2 hours, without any breakthrough. The game character was still trapped in that small town. It's a little late, I'll take you home. Okay, don't think too much about it. You think too much. Li Shizhen suppressed the urge to give the class representative a knife and took a step forward. Class representative, I played with you all night, you should tell me why you came to the video game hall dressed like this. Celadon's current dress has subverted her image all along. In the eyes of her teachers and classmates, she is an honest to old-fashioned fanatical learner. The grades are among the best, and there is no other outstanding performance. It seems that he is learning all the time. Celadon was silent for a while, and then he spoke. Actually, I don't like studying at all. Celadon was born into a big family and is the youngest daughter in the family, with 2 older brothers in front of her. His parents' expectation for him is to study hard, become a noble lady of the elite class, and finally marry a good family. Therefore, under the pressure of her parents, Celadon not only achieved excellent academic performance, but also learned various musical instruments and dances. But these are not what she likes, she just responds numbly to her parents' expectations, so that she will feel extremely envious when she sees the little gangsters playing on the roadside, entering and leaving the arcade hall. So since high school, Celadon secretly learned how to dress up tame and wanted to play in the game arcade, and then he has been at the entrance of the arcade hall, wandering from the first year of high school to the 3rd year of high school and did not dare to enter. Today is the first time in my life. So fun! Li Shizhen really couldn't understand this kind of emotion, so he could only express his understanding. Everything is difficult at the beginning. After this first time, the class representatives will dare to enter the video game hall by themselves, right? Celadon, who was jumping in front of her, suddenly stopped her footsteps, frowned, and thought about it carefully. I dare not. Don't dare. Li Shizhen, next time, take me to the video game hall, okay? Li Shizhen thought for a while. Anyway, the handheld game console was activated by chance because of Celadon. Although it was useless after activation, it should be repaid. Okay, I'll be alone at night, so I can contact you directly. By the way, don't you need to review? Do you think I need to study hard? Celadon's grades are stable enough to be able to enter the top universities, and there is no plan to compete for the top spot in her heart. It is very easy before the exam. On the contrary, it's you, Li Shizhen, your grades are not good or bad. If you study hard, you should be able to get back a lot of points in the last week. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if Li Shizhen is called, if he takes the exam seriously. He has gone through the same college entrance examination 9 times, and his grades will definitely not lose to Celadon. The problem is that after the test, the time goes back, and the result of the test is the same as the result of the blank paper. Passing by a nearby park, Celadon turned on the faucet to rinse off the disposable hair dye, removed all the makeup on his face, and took out ordinary sportswear from his school bag and changed it in the public restroom. This look is like a good girl who comes home after a night run. Celadon wiped her hair with a towel. You can send it here. Walk 200 or 300 meters to the community where I live. Li Shizhen glanced at the intersection ahead. It was the main entrance of one of the best high-end villas in Furong City. Before, he only knew that the class representative had a good family, but he didn't expect it to be so wealthy. Bye. Goodbye, Li Shizhen also. Wait. There are monsters nearby. Monster. Li Shizhen looked around. There was a large and beautiful green forest near the high-end villa area. It was very quiet at night. The transparent street lights passed through the gaps in the branches and leaves, casting mottled tree shadows on the ground. It looks like an ordinary quiet night scene. Celadon pulled Li Shizhen up and hid behind the pavilion in the park with a very firm tone. There are monsters nearby. Why do you say that? Celadon took out what looked like a compass from a small school bag. Li Shizhen knew that it was a magic element detector. It was a very expensive tool. It could detect the magic element generated when a monster appeared. Cheap models cost thousands of dollars. However, at the moment, the magic element detector is quiet and unresponsive. Class representative, are you? Absolutely. You are quiet. Wow. The treetops on the opposite side of the road swayed, and a black and translucent figure squeezed through the canopy, looming in the dark side of the street lamp. At this moment, the magic element detector in Celadon's hands responded. 2STAR monster. Celadon read out the name of the monster, and in Li Shizhen's mind, relevant information poured out. Basic monster information is included in the textbook. The original owner has received compulsory education and knows a little bit. Monsters are strange black translucent irregular objects that cannot be distinguished from their appearance. The body will form purple star spots due to the condensed magic element. The more star spots, the stronger the monster. Representative of the class, why did you know that monsters existed in advance? I am a practitioner. One of Celadon's eyes was tinged with cherry red. Li Shizhen thought it was the color contact lenses that the little sister was wearing, but he didn't expect it to be the original color of the eyes. What should we do now? I can only hide first, I can't beat it. Celadon called Ling Sud to seal the breath of the two, and took out her mobile phone to contact relevant agencies in Furong City. I'm contacting the demon suppression team now, don't make any extra moves. Li Shizhen glanced at Celadon's hand. She was quite calm, but the fingers used to dial the dial were trembling a little. It was obvious that she was very nervous. She just tried to stay calm. Monsters rarely appear in cities. The bigger the city, the safer it is. Furong City is a small city outside the third rate, but occasionally monsters come in. These things did not originally belong to this world, and the reason why they appeared was entirely because of the gaps in time and space that were opened from time to time. The monsters escaped from the gap in time and space. As long as they are not wiped out, they will continue to exist in this world. After a long period of time, there must be a lot of monsters accumulated in the current world. At this time, Celadon has already contacted the Demon Suppression Team, which specializes in dealing with monsters, and is communicating in a low voice. Boom! There was an explosion in the distance, and then the flames shot into the sky. A car driven by a hapless man was hit by the magic of the monster. The car turned over the road and exploded. The monster was like a pitch-black umbrella-shaped shadow, approaching the damaged car, digging out the flesh and blood and eating it. Celadon, who had just finished the phone call, looked up and saw the tragic scene across the street. She almost cried out in fright, and turned her head quickly, one hand clasped on Li Shizhen's shoulder and kept shaking. It's all right. It's all right, I have contacted the demon suppression team. We will be rescued soon. There was a scream from the opposite side, and a burning figure in the car kicked the car door and jumped out, throwing away the burning clothes, but was overtaken by the monster. Li Shizhen suddenly felt touched, and subconsciously turned on the handheld game console. The game character is standing in the center of the town, and a text prompt comes from above. It seems that someone is calling for help. Li Shizhen's heart skipped a beat. This is an event. Events that drive the game forward. The game character runs to the top of the town, the barricades on the path above disappear, and further ahead is a grass, the most common grass in Pokemon. After stepping in, there will be elves. At this moment, an NPC dressed as a climber was running around in the grass in a panic, followed by a snake viciously chasing him. Finally seeing the familiar elf, Li Shizhen burst into tears with excitement, but saw the text dialog box continue to pop up on the game interface. Young man over there. Please help me, I threw my backpack next to it, and the Pokeball was in it, so bring it for me. This section is a bit familiar. The Pokemon Gem version, the player can see the doctor chased and beaten by the elves in front of the first grass. The doctor's backpack fell to the side, and there were 3 Pokeballs in it. Choose one of them to fight. The Pokemon inside is also the player's initial Pokemon. However, the situation in the game interface is a bit wrong at this time. The person being chased is a mountain man, climber, and he can't see his backpack. Li Shizhen was a little depressed. When there was no elves on his body, the system set that the game character could not enter the grass, and could only go back the same way. Finally, he found the dropped backpack in a corner of the town. Deserving of being chased by a bo snake, how can the backpack fall so far? Li Shizhen made a rough judgment. The place where Shan Nan was being chased was 2 screens away from the place where the backpack fell. It was unbelievable to fall so far. Picking up the backpack according to the system prompt, the game character ran to the grass above the town, and the text prompt came again. What there was only one word, plus the symbol representing the elongated sound. Li Shizhen felt that the situation was not right. When he came to the grass again, a Beishi swallowed Shannon in one bite, his abdomen bulged, and then the image gradually faded out of the game interface. Li Shizhen opened his mouth in surprise. There are actually dead people in Pokemon? However, there is something wrong with this version of Pokemon, but it's not unacceptable. What? At the same time, there was a scream from across the road. The man who managed to escape from the burning car was caught up by the monster, cut his neck, and splashed ketchup all over the floor. Celadon shrank into a ball in fright. Li Shizhen looked at the tragic situation on the other side, and then looked at the handheld game console. Could it be that the trigger events in reality will be fed back to the game console? There was a series of special engine sounds in the distance, and the demon suppression team arrived, but the handheld game console did not respond much. It seemed that the real world and the game world did not correspond one to one. Li Shizhen opened the backpack interface, and there was only one thing in it, Shan Nan's backpack. Click to use Yamao's backpack. Get 5 Pokeballs, 2 potions, 320 gold. To be able to directly pick up other trainers' items and use them? But in this way, there is no Usangia. At the beginning of each generation of Pokemon, players can choose one of the 3 elves in the doctor's hand as the initial elves. There is obviously no conventional plot here. Li Shizhen remembered that Shan Nan had said that there were spirits in his backpack that could be used for battle. Of the 5 Pokeballs obtained before, there are only 4 left in the backpack interface, and there is an additional column of elves in the menu list, indicating that the game characters now have Pokemon. Click on the sprite interface. Each game character can carry 6 sprites, and only the first of the 6 positions is occupied. Li Shizhen glanced at the interface, his mouth almost dislocated. Miss Lips. Celadon, who was beside her, was already in a state of high tension, and was so frightened that she almost jumped up. Be quiet. What, sister? It's okay, no problem. After dealing with the scene, the demon suppression team looked for the person who raised the alarm. Celadon asked Li Shizhen to leave first. Seeing that the contact person was a high school student, the demon suppression team would definitely contact their family members. At that time, they could not explain the reason why the two were together. With the demon suppression team present, Li Shizhen didn't worry that Celadon was in danger and waved goodbye. After walking around for a long time and returning home, Li Shizhen couldn't wait to turn on the handheld game console again. The first one in the elf team was indeed Miss Lip, a current level 30 elf with ice and superpower attributes. Speaking of the three families of the royal family, Millip sisters' data is definitely not comparable to them. The race value is around 450, and the specific distribution is not bad. But, the general player team rarely has this elf. The characteristic is to predict the dream, predict the most powerful move of the enemy. Open the list of moves and check the skills of Miss Lips. Devil's Kiss, Fine Snow, Frozen Fist, Awakening Slap. They are all moves that Miss Lips will automatically comprehend during the upgrade process. Wait a minute, wake up the slap. This is a move from the 4th era. Sure enough, this version of the game is at least the beginning of Shineo. Now I don't have the conditions to match Miss Lips, but this skill is actually reasonable. Normal games are no problem, and there is a Devil's Kiss, there is a 75% probability that the opponent will fall asleep. Use the hypnosis skill to hypnotize wild elves, which can increase the capture rate. Li Shizhen didn't intend to carry a lip-smacking sister on his body forever. He quickly stepped on the grass area. He had 4 Pokeballs on his body, and he could buy another one with gold coins. First, grab some Pokemon for backup. After stepping back and forth on the grass for half an hour, Li Shizhen was dejected to find that there was no wild elves at all. Sure enough, this game was played out of common sense. The game character continued to walk up along the grass. In front of it was a row of big trees that could not be passed directly. There was a depression, indicating that there was the entrance to the forest, thinking about a string of green brilliance. Li Shizhen tried to enter the forest, but got a text prompt, "Mysterious energy is surging in the forest, and it is impossible to enter." What kind of plot is this? There was no corresponding plot in the version of Pokemon that he had played before. Li Shizhen remembered that the reason he was able to cross the roadblock before was because of an accident in reality. In the absence of a real event trigger, it may really be impossible to enter the forest. Helpless, Li Shizhen returned to the grass area and stepped on it for a long time, but still did not see a wild elf, and the game experience was extremely poor. After muttering a few words, Li Shizhen casually flipped through the pitiful items, including the character status. The name of the game character is really called Li Shizhen. Obviously, he has never given a name before, nor has he chosen a gender. Wait a minute. Why do players have health and other abilities? Li Shizhen was surprised to find that the game characters actually had health bars. Life, Attack, Defense, Special Attack, Special Defense, Speed, a total of 6 specific ability values. You must know that Pokemon is a game where the trainer directs the elves to fight. The trainer controlled by the player does not participate in the battle and should not have data such as health. Think calmly, the mountain man was bitten to death by a bo snake before, which means that this version of Pokemon can kill people. Death in the game is not the clearing of health. The feeling of a dark game came to my mind. This handheld game console is closely attached to Li Shizhen. The relationship is not simple. If the character in the game dies, will the player himself be attacked? What's worse, Li Shizhen found that although the game character has life and 6 ability points, there is no level display and experience value data. In other words, the game characters will not be upgraded. Even if you play for hundreds of hours, the main body will be weaker or weaker, and only the elves will become stronger. Genuine Pokemon does not have players to upgrade, but players will not die. If the battle fails, it will be dark before you return to the center of the Pokémon. Li Shizhen suddenly had a big head, and finally something similar to a golden finger in his hand could be turned on normally, but there were a lot of problems. A prompt appears on the game interface: mysterious energy is surging in the forest. Control the game character again to come to the entrance of the forest. The green mysterious energy still exists, unable to enter. He slept vaguely until the next day, woke up with his biological clock before the alarm clock went off, and Li Shizhen opened the curtains. Within 3 seconds of the difference, Wen Dongli, who was diagonally opposite, also opened the curtain, and both sides nodded as a greeting. All day long, Li Shizhen was jumping up and down the school, doing different things from before, thinking about relying on their own random events to promote the progress of the game. However, there was no gain at all. Instead, he was arrested by the head teacher and sent to the office to give lectures. After school, Li Shizhen recalled what happened today. The game did not break through, but the text prompts continued. There is a mysterious energy surging in the forest. This text prompt appeared twice today, 15 or 16 hours apart. I don't know what it means. After stepping on the grass for another night, Li Shizhen still didn't encounter the wild elves, and fell asleep in depression. Classmates, tomorrow you will go to the battlefield. On the last day of the countdown to the college entrance examination, there was no self-study or tutoring arranged this afternoon. The head teacher organized a meeting for everyone, and finally boosted morale with passion. Li Shizhen felt something, and turned on the handheld game console. Every time there was a change in the game, he could sense it in his heart. Text prompt: mysterious energy is surging in the forest. It's this reminder again. It's been a week, and there's no progress in the game. There are reminders of the mysterious energy of the forest every day, and the frequency is getting faster and faster. At first, it was twice a day. Today, Li Shizhen received 4 reminders. It was only in the evening. It was estimated that there were still more in the evening. The number of reminders had doubled or tripled. It always makes people feel that something big is about to happen. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Wen Dongli, who was at the same table, said lightly, Li Shizhen, are you nervous? Nervous? That mysterious energy. Mystery? Energy? No. Li Shizhen quickly retracted his mind and looked at Wen Dongli in front of him, her soft eyes and elegant face. Although her name was not listed on the flower list of number 2 middle school in Furong City, in Li Shizhen's eyes, Wen Dongli was the most charming. I mean, there's nothing to be nervous about, I've taken the test so many times. So many times. Oh, a mock test. How can the mock test be the same? Wen Dongli smiled, Li Shizhen, you've been very strange recently, a little absent-minded. Banhua sits by her side, of course she will float. Wen Dongli was stunned for a moment. Li Shizhen had never said such provocative words, and couldn't help turning a little red. Don't talk nonsense, I've been at the same table for a year. In exchange for going back in time a few times before, Li Shizhen did not dare to hint at all, for fear of affecting Wen Dongli's college entrance examination status. Later, he calmed down, and the hints were useless. Even if the confession was successful, everything would be emptied after the time was reversed. The classmates went home one after another. Wen Dongli and Li Shizhen were the same as before, staggering the front and back of the school, meeting at the intersection away from the school, and walking home silently, occasionally exchanging a few words in between. At the entrance of the high-end community, Wen Dongli nodded lightly and left, like a snow geese crossing the sky, leaving no trace. Li Shizhen returned to the door and took out the key. The phone vibrated, a text message from Celadon. Tonight, the video game hall. Today? Li Shizhen thought about it, the college entrance examination tomorrow. There is a mysterious energy surging in the forest. During dinner, a text prompt appeared on the handheld game console again. For the 5th time today, the entrance to the forest was not allowed to enter. When the time was almost up, Li Shizhen opened the door and walked to the rented suite, and came to a block 1 kilometer apart. Celadon, dressed as a little sister, was already waiting at the entrance of the video game hall. "Class representative, here I come." "Come here, you are not allowed to call me a class representative here." Celadon skillfully pulled up the corner of Li Shizhen's clothes. "Go there today." A few days ago, Celadon also made an appointment and went to other game arcades together. To be honest, Li Shizhen was quite surprised to receive an invitation today. "Class representative, take the college entrance examination tomorrow." "Didn't I ask you on the phone, do you mind?" "Of course I don't mind." Li Shizhen participated in the exam 9 times, and he could get a near full score on the test, and he could also pass a blank. The outcome didn't matter at all. "I'm worried about the exam status of the class representative." Celadon's strength is indeed strong, and she is also an art student. She has a lot of extra points in musical instruments. She seems to be able to dance and paint. However, the exam status is really important. Li Shizhen was a little worried that Celadon played crazy all night, and how much of his strength would he be able to show the next day. "It's okay." Celadon shook his head. "When I go back next time, let's talk about it." "Oh, yes, can you do me a favor?" Li Shizhen summoned the handheld game console and held it in the palm of his hand. Of course, outsiders could not see or touch this thing. Celadon looked at Li Shizhen's gesture of raising his palm. "Why? High five to cheer you on." "Yes, let's take the luck of the representative of the class." Li Shizhen remembered the first change in the handheld game console. It happened that he accidentally bumped into the class representative, knocking out 2 cracks on the screen, and the game ran normally. Later, the 2 cracks closed and the game was running well, but there were many mysteries. Li Shizhen wanted to find a breakthrough from Celadon again. "Okay." Snapped. Celadon agreed with one bite, raised her toes and gave a high five, making a crisp sound. There was no change in the handheld game console. Li Shizhen felt that compared with the strength just now, the impact when they met outside the game hall for the first time was much worse. "Class representative, tap hard." "Hey? Oh!" Snapped. Celadon is a cultivator, and the strength in her hands is quite strong. When she patted Li Shizhen's body backwards, her palms turned red. "Hey, it hurts. Didn't you want me to hit hard?" Li Shizhen glanced at the handheld game console, and he couldn't change it. Simply letting the Celadon create an impact effect would not work, so he had to give up. "Go in and play." "Okay." It was rare for Li Shizhen to join the ranks of arcade machines. When they met a few times before, he had never touched video games at all. He sat on the side and studied handheld game consoles the whole time. "Every time I come over with you, I sit next to you in a daze. I thought you didn't like this." "No, I had something on my mind at that time." Li Shizhen studied the handheld game console for a week, and the conclusion he came to was nothing more than waiting for some kind of event in reality to trigger and promote the game progress, otherwise it would be useless to shake it. After playing the game for 2 hours, it was already 2100 hours when Celadon suddenly spoke up. 13, didn't you want to persuade me to go back?" "No. The reason why Li Shizhen asked about Celadon's status outside the video game hall was because she wondered why she came out to play games the night before the college entrance examination. "I don't care at all. After all, no matter how good the Celadon exam is, time will go backwards. Let's go." The font of Game Over popped up on the screen, and the game coin box beside Celadon was empty. Li Shizhen didn't know what happened, and followed silently out of the arcade hall. With the night wind blowing, the two came to the park where they encountered monsters a week ago. Celadon took off her makeup, washed off the disposable hair dye, and put on the sportswear in her backpack. Spiritual elements surged, the moisture on the shoulder-length hair quickly dried, and Celadon sat down on the park bench. In the past, when he arrived here, Celadon should say goodbye to Li Shizhen and go home. Obviously, he has something on his mind right now. What happened to the class representative? I don't want to take the college entrance examination. Well, then I won't participate. Li Shizhen blurted out naturally, but the result was the same, going back in time. Celadon turned around in astonishment. Why can you speak so calmly? Well, Li Shizhen couldn't explain the truth, because no one cares about me, and no one has expectations of me. Envious. The evening wind blows Celadon's hair, and the scent of perfume wafts in the air. What's there to envy? If you came to my life, I'm afraid you'd be depressed in 2 days. I'm almost depressed. Celadon's parents have already made plans. The goal is the St. Lan Women's College, the scope of which is limited to the classical music category, and several couples who can be blind dated have also been arranged. Did you arrange a blind date as soon as you went to college? Li Shizhen was a little surprised. Just talking about Shenglan Women's College, it sounds like a noble school with money to enter. In fact, the score requirements are very high. Vocal music, calligraphy and painting art are among the top in the industry, and it is also famous for training noble etiquette colleges. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Celadon pointed to her face. Do you think I'm suitable to be the young lady? Thinking back to the look of the little sister who was jumping around in the video game hall, it was really inappropriate. Can't you discuss it with your family? No. My life path has been set since I was a child, and that's it, so I'm not convinced. Celadon clasped her shoulders with both hands. I want to choose a major in the study of spiritual tools. Obviously, my cultivation talent is so good, and I'm also interested. These words have been said to the parents, and the only thing in return is the accusation. In the eyes of family members and outsiders, Celadon is generally an extremely well-behaved girl. Once accused by her elders, she will only dare to stand aside obediently. That's why the class representative suddenly said that he didn't want to take the college entrance examination. Yes, once I don't take the college entrance examination, all these shackles on me will be lost, but after being obedient for so many years, Celadon really didn't have the courage to do rebellious things. Even when she entered the game room, Li Shizhen was required to accompany her. How dare she skip the college entrance examination? What's more, after skipping the college entrance examination, the change of the whole life is unpredictable. Li Shizhen didn't think about it that much, so he just lifted it off. Anyway, 3 days later, it was time to turn back the clock. If you asked me if I wanted to skip the college entrance examination, I would definitely nod my head. This is already the 10th cycle of going back in time. Not to mention Celadon, Li Shizhen also wants to do some things that he has not done before, such as being absent from the college entrance examination. Really? But you should take the test honestly. Celadon's face was full of depression. What do you mean? You are different from me. You don't have the shackles given by so many family members, and you have worked hard for more or less 3 years. I have the shackles of space-time level. What nonsense are you talking about? Li Shizhen knew that the explanation would not make sense, so he didn't explain it. If you want to get rid of the fate of becoming a famous lady, the method is actually very simple. You don't need to take the risk of giving up the exam. How to say? Suppress your strength and go to an average school. However, when I see the paper, I will give a full score for OCD. Forget it, I'll take one less subject. After listening to Li Shizhen, he resisted the urge to hit someone. It really doesn't matter whether we take the test or not, just don't restore the contents of the handheld game console to the time before it is turned on. All right. Celadon patted her skirt and stood up from the bench. We part here, I have to take a detour ahead. Why? Li Shizhen had already noticed that the road in the distance was blocked by temporary barricades, and it seemed that it was not a simple construction. Celadon responded, "The demon suppression team, there was a crack in time and space a few days ago, so there are monsters hurting people. The demon suppression team has blocked a large forest nearby these days, and the monsters in it must be checked out." "Oh! What's the matter with you? It sounds so excited." "Fine." Li Shizhen immediately thought of the battle that started in the last game. It was precisely because of the encounter with monsters. If the demon suppression team still had a battle, it might be able to promote the progress of the game. Celadon looked up and down Li Shizhen with funny eyes. "What a strange guy, I'm leaving. Bye-bye." Li Shizhen took a small circle around the park, and quickly ran into the woods on the edge of the blockade area of the demon suppression group. This is a small mountain forest that exists as urban greenery. There is no lighting at night, and the wind blows the leaves rustling. Before, I thought about going to the forest to see if there were any monsters, but when the cold mountain wind blew, Li Shizhen calmed down. "It's a little dangerous." Li Shizhen himself is not a cultivator and has no talent for cultivating. Based on speculation, it is speculated that the handheld game console cannot be simply used to play, and should be able to fight monsters in reality. But in case it doesn't work, this little life will be explained. After the death, I don't know whether the reversal of time will have a resurrection effect. After several entanglements in his heart, Li Shizhen still intends to move on. The temporary camp set up by the demon suppression team can already be seen below the of the hill, which is a little more reassuring. If you run into a monster and call for help directly, you should be able to survive. Even if you only have half your life left to hang in the hospital, you only need to hang for 3 days and wait until you turn back time. Continuing to in the forest, Li Shizhen felt more and more that this was impossible. If he took out his mobile phone to illuminate the surroundings, it would be as if he was luring monsters to attack first. A burst of explosions came from behind the small hill, where the demon suppression team seemed to be fighting. Li Shizhen suddenly became excited, and hurriedly groped to climb to the top of the hill, but saw a huge black figure sticking out from the back of the hill first, so frightened that the soles of his feet slipped into a depression. His mouth was full of mud, and his clothes were torn a few times, but Li Shizhen didn't make much noise, and was lying on his stomach in the depression. Ordinary people can't sense spiritual elements and magic elements, and Li Shizhen can't detect the location of monsters in advance, so he simply relies on his normal 5 senses. There were 4 purple star spots on the monster that emerged from the back of the mountain just now, 4 stars. This level is already very difficult to deal with. Fortunately, it was pulled back to the back of the mountain by the demon suppression team. A small body like Li Shizhen would definitely die if he hit it, so he could only lie down and take out his handheld game console. On the game interface, there was no response from the grass at all. It seemed that the battle that was separated by a hill had nothing to do with this side. Etc. Li Shizhen found that a grass on the game interface kept shaking, like a shaking grass that appeared with a sprite tracker, and there must be sprites in it. In contrast, a black figure the size of a washboard jumped out from the top of the mountain. Under the lighting provided by the demon suppression team, Li Shizhen barely recognized that there were 2 star spots on the monster. Although the number of stars is not high, it is not something that ordinary people can handle. The game interface cuts into the battle, and on the opposite side is a blurry black shadow, like a texture error, which cannot be displayed. Sure enough, the real monsters and Pokémon cannot correspond. Because there is no picture book, Sombra's health bar is a series of question marks, and the level is also a question mark, but at least it means that he can fight against it. By default, the first elf in the elf team is thrown. At the same time that Sister Millip appeared in the game, Sister Millip also appeared in front of Li Shizhen. Synchronized summons? Li Shizhen understood some of the rules. In reality, if you encounter an enemy, the game triggers a battle, and the enemy is a dark shadow that cannot be displayed. Summon the elves in the game, and the corresponding elves will also appear in reality. Miss Lip's ability activates, predicts dreams, and predicts the name of the opponent's most powerful skill. The ability to read monsters, bite. The monster bites and hits Miss Lip, causing little damage. Li Shizhen took a few steps back and gave an order on the game interface. Sister Millip used the Devil's Kiss, and the monster fell asleep. Seeing the sleeping monster in front of him, Li Shizhen breathed a sigh of relief. In the game, it is a turn-based battle, and you can think slowly. In reality, it is a real-time battle. If you are slow, you will die. Sister Millip uses Frozen Fist with a power of 75 and a 10% chance of freezing the opponent. When the attack hits, the monster is still sleeping. According to the rules of Pokémon, the sleep effect lasts for several rounds randomly, maybe 2 to 5 rounds. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com may also be nerfed for turns 1 to 4 in subsequent generations. Sister Millip launched an attack again, freezing her fist. The monster's health was still a question mark, she didn't know how much was left. Li Shizhen hurriedly chose a backpack and planned to throw the Pokeball, but found that the opponent couldn't catch it. It seems that monsters can only be killed, not captured as elves in the game. Sister Millip uses Awakening Slap, with a power of 60. For enemies in a sleeping state, the power is doubled, and the monster is killed. After gaining experience points, Miss Lip's experience gauge has increased a bit. In contrast, game characters do not gain experience points, they will not level up, and their ability points should be as much as they should be. Get 50 gold coins. Hey! Can you get gold coins in battle? In the normal game settings, only the elf trainer can get gold coins after the battle. I didn't expect that the monsters can drop gold coins directly. That's fine, at least you don't have to worry about money to buy medicines and Pokeballs. Call. The battle interface in the game was lifted. Li Shizhen breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't expect that the first battle against monsters in his life would come so unexpectedly. Sister Millip was still standing by her side, and she stayed by the player's side as if she had activated the elf follow function in the game. Li Shizhen didn't have time to do research, so he first brought Sister Millip into the elf center and returned to full state. A stream of warm energy flows in Li Shizhen's body. While the spirit center heals the spirit, the health of the game characters is restored synchronously. This is a situation that does not exist in Pokémon. After all, in normal games, the trainer does not participate in the battle. Li Shizhen glanced at the tattered trouser legs. Originally, there were several scratches on the skin, so his health was deducted. After the treatment at the elf center, his body was unscathed. Entering the elf center can heal the state of all elves and players, which means, as long as he is alive and enters the elf center with one breath, Li Shizhen can fully recover within 5 seconds. At least you don't have to worry about dying too easily in the wild. Controlling the game character to walk out of the elf center, Li Shizhen was surprised to find that there were several NPCs next to the only 2 houses in the town, and they were busy using building materials to build houses. It was only after I walked up to the dialogue that I realized that an open-air market was going to be built here. Xiaopo town is finally getting a little bit popular. Li Shizhen remembered that when the monster battle was triggered before, there was a place in the grass above the town that kept shaking, and there were elves there. He hurriedly ran to the edge of the grass was shaking, and he stepped on it, and the battle interface was spread out. It's a normal elf. Keek. By default, Miss Lips is thrown, and the opposite is a pot, which can be called the elves of the top echelon of defense in Pokémon. Since there is no elf picture book, the name and level of the pot are 2 question marks, but a health value can be displayed normally. Sister Millip used the Devil's Kiss, but missed. Juju uses Entanglement, a 10 POWER parallel import skill, which can't deal much damage. In the next round, Miss Lips successfully hypnotized the opponent, and Li Shizhen fell into thinking. Who must be caught? The problem is that he doesn't know the opponent's level. The less HP the elf has, the easier it is to catch it, and the easier it is to catch it when it is in an abnormal state. Now I'm worried that the level of Hoo is too low, and Sister Millip slaps the other side to death with a slap. Try to throw a pokeball to try your luck, the opponent is full of blood and it is not easy to catch, and it fails. Li Shizhen felt distressed for the loss of a pokeball worth 200. Hoo was still sleeping, and Sister Millip used her skill, Fine Snow, with a power of 40. After hitting the pot, the opponent's HP will be deducted by about 20%. Li Shizhen breathed a sigh of relief, and it seemed that he could fight for a while longer. Sister Millip used the Fine Snow again to reduce the life of the pot to less than half. Hoo woke up and used the skill Tightening, with a power of 15. After hitting it, it lasted 2 to 5 rounds. Every round, Miss Lip would be hurt and she could not escape. Sister Millip used the Devil's Kiss to hypnotize the pot again, and then Li Shizhen threw the pokeball and grabbed it. The second elf. Speaking of Hoo, it is also in elves that are rarely used by players. Anyway, it is more popular than Sister Millip. It is a shield with super defense and special defense, and its offensiveness is very, very low. Returning to the filling state of the elf center, a violent explosion sounded, which brought Li Shizhen's attention back to reality. Right now, I am in the mountains and forests. There are monsters fighting with the demon suppressing team nearby. To be in a daze here is like courting death. Li Shizhen quickly put away the handheld game console and glanced at the depression. The monsters that were killed before were still lying there, their bodies were all tattered by the freezing, leaving ice residues in the wounds. Miss Lips is really fierce. He ran out of the dangerous area in a flash. When Li Shizhen returned to the park, it was almost midnight. He was sweating profusely and sticking to the mud. His body was dirty and uncomfortable. After finally running back to the rented suite, Li Shizhen lost all the tattered clothes on his body, turned on the shower and took a hot shower, and then he was relieved. Hey, the second elf, and I can fight monsters. Li Shizhen clenched his arms tightly, excited. Hoo, the current level is 23, has the skills Endurance, Tightening, Entanglement, Mystery Veil, Mysterious Guardian. Features, strong and will never be killed by one hit. The skills are so shabby that people can't bear to look at them directly, but there is no way, these are the skills that the pot automatically understands during the upgrade process. The positioning of this elf, Hoo, is originally a shield, with extremely high defense and special defense, low racial values in attack and life, and almost can endure the skills. Open the game interface, there is a summon option on the sprite panel, and after confirming, a purple lip-smacking sister appears beside the bed, which looks really scary at first glance. I really don't know how the designer came up with such a purple-skinned, blonde-haired sausage-mouthed sister. The elves are not completely puppets. They have their own consciousness. Even without words, they can have simple spiritual exchanges with Li Shizhen. Can you pour me a glass of water? Sister Millip turned around and took out the water cup from the cabinet, and after fumbling for a while, she found a thermos. Li Shizhen clicked on the pot he just caught, and an upside-down red bowl appeared beside the bed, with yellow tentacles and a small head sticking out from the sides and top. Hoo, you, help me make a quilt. Hoo stretched out his tentacles and pulled up the quilt beside Li Shizhen. After studying for a long time, there is no problem in communicating with the elves. If they are not given instructions, they will move in the room according to their own will. Li Shizhen reconfirmed that there were no other vibrating grasses on the game interface, the NPCs who were still building houses were not progressing fast, and there were still text prompts of mysterious energy surging in the forest from time to time, and they were prompted 6 times today. It's time to sleep. Glancing at the clock on the wall, it was the first time that Li Shizhen stayed up so late at 2 o'clock in the morning, except that he was in a bad mood and couldn't fall asleep. In fact, all the classes could be skipped and he slept all day long, but Li Shizhen wanted to see Wen Dongli, and wanted to go to school with her. Even though he knew that the class was meaningless, he still got up on time every day, etc. Just as he was about to fall asleep, Li Shizhen suddenly remembered tomorrow's college entrance examination. No. It's already early morning, so it should be said that it is today's college entrance examination. Li Shizhen didn't plan to take the college entrance examination, so he had to get up early. If Wen Dongli saw that the curtains here were not opened on time, read www.yuyuganshu.com, exams are sure to be distracting. In fact, no matter what Wen Dongli did in the test, everything will be restored after turning back time. But caring about a person's mood is like this. Even though it was the 10th time back in time, Li Shizhen still didn't intend to disturb Wen Dongli's life too much. More than 4 hours later, the alarm clock rang, and Li Shizhen lifted the quilt. Sister Fan Lip was sleeping on the sofa. The pot stretched out her head and tentacles from the shell, and crawled to the kitchen to start preparing breakfast. Li Shizhen opened the curtains, and in the diagonally opposite window, Wen Dongli stood quietly by the window, her eyes curved into a beautiful arc, and she nodded lightly. She seems to wake up earlier than usual. Obviously, the exam time for the morning session of the college entrance examination is at 9 o'clock, so she can sleep longer than normal school. Li Shizhen asked before that Wen Dongli was assigned to another exam room, so he didn't have to worry about missing the exam. Went out. Every time before going out, Li Shizhen would symbolically shout to the empty home. This time, there was finally a strange response, and the two elves returned to the poke ball. Passing by the main entrance of the high-end community next door, Wen Dongli was wearing a school uniform, still so fresh and elegant. How are you preparing? Me? What's there to prepare for? Haha, actually, I didn't sleep well yesterday. Li Shizhen said that he didn't sleep well, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, today is to play with the class representative. If the class representative doesn't have the courage to skip the college entrance examination, we will go home to make up for sleep. Wen Dongli took 2 steps forward and pointed to a fork in the road. My exam room is number 1 middle school, go this way. I'm taking the overseas Chinese high school entrance exam, so I can only leave early today. Wen Dongli waved her small fist nervously. Well, come on. Come on. Seeing Wen Dongli's back disappearing at the end of the road, Li Shizhen regained his attention and came to the entrance of the video game hall with an empty school bag on his back. The long hair swayed in the morning breeze. Celadon did not die or make up this time. She stood outside the game hall with a tangled expression. Class president. You really came? What a surprise I came here. Li Shizhen didn't really believe that Celadon dared to skip the first subject. It's an accident when the class representative comes. I've made up my mind. Celadon opened her school bag, and there was only the school uniform she had changed before. I don't want to go to the ladies-girls school according to my parents' plan, and then start a blind date, so I didn't take the language test. It's a little risky. If there is no time to go back, Li Shizhen will probably persuade Celadon to go back to take the exam and find other opportunities to break the shackles of fate. It is very important to have a positive diploma. It doesn't matter, if I miss a subject and I have 600 points left, I estimate that I can get 550 points, plus the bonus points for various art awards. The final score should be close to 600 points. Li Shizhen retracted his previous thoughts and did not persuade him. Swiba is too scary. Celadon was still worried. Is 13 not worried? If you don't have a diploma, you will have nothing to do. It doesn't matter, everything will go back to the starting point. Whether you take the college entrance examination or not, it will go back to before the test. What are you talking about? Philosophy. Do you believe in going back in time? Celadon was taken aback for a moment. Why do you suddenly say that time has flown back? After the college entrance examination, there will be a time lapse. back to the week before the college entrance examination, so it doesn't matter whether you take the test today or not. Hey? Are you stupid when you play games? Li Shizhen smiled, we are here to play games today. But it didn't open the door. Celadon pointed to the video game hall behind him. This place was supposed to be open 24 hours a day, but unfortunately it was too close to the overseas Chinese Central, so it couldn't open during the college entrance examination. How about going to a farther place? Okay. Then I have to change clothes. Celadon has changed into casual clothes, and Li Shizhen is still wearing a school uniform. In this special time period, wearing a school uniform for long-distance travel is too wild. Maybe there will be volunteers who the candidates and ask if they want help. Taking Celadon back to his residence, Li Shizhen changed his clothes and took the bus before he found a normal video game hall in Furong City Commercial Plaza. Celadon played frantically for a long time before saying that the math test in the afternoon would not be too good, so she went to the second half. A prompt appears on the game interface, mysterious energy is surging in the forest. Li Shizhen counted silently until he returned home in the evening. This text prompt appeared 6 times, several hours before midnight, and the prompt was more frequent than yesterday. He always felt that something big would happen in the pocket world. The next day, the curtain was opened, and Wen Dongli, who was smiling sweetly, was on the opposite side. She did well in the test on the first day, and she slept well last night, full of energy, and even more warm and charming. Li Shizhen, how was yesterday? Hand in blank. Haha, don't be kidding. At the same intersection, when Dongli went away, and Li Shizhen felt something was wrong. It wasn't because of the girl he cared about, but because of the text prompt. It was only 8 o'clock in the morning, and the prompt of the mysterious energy had already appeared 3 times. It was also in the commercial plaza of Furong City. Celadon had a lot of fun, and even played the piano in the shopping mall when he was resting. His skills were quite superb. With a thought, Li Shizhen knew that there was some kind of change in the handheld game console. The text prompt this time was different. It meant that the town market had been built. There is an extra screen-length market next to the Elf Center and the store, which is a bit like the open-air market on the waterfront of Kana City in the Hone area of Pokemon. It is much smaller in scale, and no stall owner has settled in yet. A prompt appears on the game interface, mysterious energy is surging in the forest. Again. The next afternoon, the last subject of the college entrance examination was over. Li Shizhen had already received the 8th mysterious energy reminder. The forest above the grass still couldn't enter, and he didn't know what was going to happen. 13. In the corner of the coffee shop, Celadon, who had taken the college entrance examination, looked out the window. Some candidates who had already finished their exams rushed into the entertainment area of the shopping mall. Tonight, all KTVs in Furong City are expected to be full. What's up? It's over. Li Shizhen stopped drinking water. What? The exam was too good. However, judging from the tone of despair, it shouldn't be because the test was too good, it's because the car overturned. 13. I forgot to write the candidate's information. Pfft. Li Shizhen almost sprayed coffee on Celadon's face. It really overturned? I asked you to play games for a long time. What should I do? Celadon wiped her tears. I dare not tell others. Missing 300 points, even Celadon couldn't hold it. Only Li Shizhen didn't take the college entrance examination at all. The situation was even more extreme, and he became the only object to talk to. 13. Why are you so calm? Celadon looks like a good girl who has done something wrong, tears streaming down her face. Before the results come out, she won't reveal it, but how do you explain it? It's okay, calm down first and wipe away your tears, everyone around me thinks I've bullied you. Li Shizhen took out the napkin on the table and handed it out. The cafe is now crowded with people, and with the surging student tide after the college entrance examination, UU reading www.uugonshu.com will attract a lot of attention. 13 is really calm enough. Celadon took the tissue that was handed over and wiped away her tears, muttering that she was sorry that her family had made such a serious mistake. The college entrance examination is mainly for themselves. It is the first major hurdle in most people's lives that decides their future path. Then what should I do? Who made you want to miss a subject? In fact, you honestly entered the examination room. If you want to suppress your strength, you can't get into Shenglan Women's College, you don't write Chinese composition, and you don't do the last 2 or 3 big questions in mathematics, that's all. No, obsessive-compulsive disorder. I will definitely exert 100% of my strength. Li Shizhen's calm attitude reassured Celadon. For some reason, she was willing to believe Li Shizhen's words that the bad things she did in the past 2 days would return to the original point, even though it sounds like a fantasy. He was only halfway through his words, but there was a feeling in his heart, which must be a hint about mysterious energy in the handheld game console. This time the text is a little different, the mysterious energy surging in the forest is more intense. Stronger? When he came to the entrance of the forest again, the originally faint light turned into a large green ball of light. It seemed that there was some kind of powerful existence in the forest, but unfortunately it was still impossible to enter. Back in the town, the newly built open-air market had a new booth. Li Shizhen went to ask and found that the other party was selling special poke balls. Nest balls, healing balls, friends balls, and the super useful fast ball and time ball. These special poke balls are the same as in the normal game, 1,000 each. Li Shizhen only has 370 gold coins on hand, so he can't afford it for the time being. However, the presence of businessmen is a good sign, indicating that the functions of the town will continue to be enriched as the game progresses.